Today, we're digging into some really interesting information you've gathered about the top 100 third-party logistics companies, the 3PLs, in North America for 2025.
That's right.
And just looking through it, the picture seems to be one of, well, slower growth maybe,
Yeah.
and definitely a lot of uncertainty around trade.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the main theme, I think.
So our mission today is to really unpack that, see what's driving these challenges, and how the big players are, coping.
Sounds good. The main source here is the 2025 Top 100 list from Transport Topics and Armstrong and Associates. Gives a pretty detailed view.
Okay.
And what jumps out, like you said, is this feeling of a freight market recovery that's, well, not really firing on all cylinders.
Right.
Most of the top 100 did see some growth in 2024, but a lot of it was pretty modest.
Okay.
And maybe around a third of them actually saw revenue go down compared to the year before.
A third. Wow.
Yeah. It really signals things are, cooling off a bit.
So even the giants aren't totally immune then. When we look at the very top, are the usual suspects still there?
Pretty much. Amazon's holding on to number one, second year in a row.
Right.
Their third-party seller services revenue is just huge.
Oh.
$156 billion.
$156 billion. It really shows that dual role they play, retailer and logistics provider.
Absolutely. Then you got C.H. Robinson, still very strong at number two. $16.8 billion estimated gross revenue.
A household name in brokerage, yeah.
And then some interesting movement below that. GXO Logistics jumped up to number three.
GXO, they're big in contract logistics, warehousing, right?
Exactly. $11.7 billion. That move probably reflects, more companies outsourcing that side of things.
Makes sense.
Then J.B. Hunt, known for trucking and intermodal, and UPS Supply Chain Solutions, they round out the top five. Still a lot of strength in those integrated models.
$11.4 billion estimated for J.B. Hunt, $11.2 billion for UPS SCS.
Okay. Yeah, estimates on those, but clearly big numbers.
But it's not just the incumbents, is it? The sources mention new companies cracking the top 100.
That's right. 5 new entrants this year.
Oh, interesting. Who are they?
Let's see. Dewell Group at 77, Bridgeway Connects at 78, Transervice Logistics and Lilly Transportation, they're listed together at 80.
Okay.
Then BMAC Logistics at 94, and Evans Transportation Services at 97.
So what does that tell us? That even with slower growth, there's still room for new players?
I think so, yeah. It shows the market's still dynamic. Maybe they have a niche or new tech or just, a more agile approach that's working.
Competition is definitely alive and well.
Seems like it.
Now, something else that really jumped out was the acquisition activity in 2024. Some big moves reshaping things.
Definitely. RXO, they're number 16 on the list. They bought Coyote Logistics.
Right, from UPS, wasn't it?
Yeah, for just over $1 billion back in September 24.
$1 billion. That's a serious statement in the brokerage space.
It is a clear strategic move, probably seeing long-term value despite the kind of lukewarm market right now, consolidating share, getting tech, network density, all that.
So even in slow times, companies with capital are buying.
Exactly. We also saw Schneider, number 18, buy Cowan Systems for $390 million.
What was the focus there?
Mostly boosting their dedicated contract carriage business, providing dedicated fleets for companies.
Gotcha. And NFI, number 22.
They picked up Transfix's brokerage business. Maybe Transfix is pivoting focus elsewhere.
Interesting. And then the really big one looming.
Ah, yes. The DB Schenker deal.
DSV, number 11, looking to acquire Schenker, number 26. What's the price tag on that?
Reported at $15.9 billion. Expect to close, I think, Q2 of 2025.
Wow. That's massive consolidation on a global scale.
It really is. It fits that broader trend, doesn't it? In slower growth periods, M&A becomes a key path to scale, efficiency, broader reach.
Absolutely. It'll be fascinating to see how that integration works out.
For sure.
Okay, so let's circle back to this slow growth theme in 2024. The sources link it to that weaker freight recovery and just general economic volatility.
Yeah, that seems to be the consensus.
The projection for the U.S. 3PL market in 2025, $316.2 billion, with most growth expected early in the year.
That's the forecast, yes. But there's a big asterisk next to it.
Because of the trade uncertainty.
Exactly. That casts a pretty big shadow over the second half predictions, especially.
But still, even modest growth on that kind of base number shows how vital the sector is.
Oh, absolutely. It's fundamental to the economy.
Let's break it down by segment a bit.
Yeah.
How did freight brokerage do specifically in 24? You mentioned C.H. Robinson's numbers, RXO moving up. Sounds like a mixed picture.
It was definitely mixed, tepid conditions overall. The list of the top 10 brokerages by gross revenue shows, the big players are still dominant,
Right.
but it's intensely competitive. Scale helps, technology helps, relationships help, especially when the market's soft. Brokers probably had to work harder for every load.
Makes sense. What about dedicated contract carriers? We saw J.B. Hunt actually cut its tractor count.
Yeah, down about 600 tractors, likely adjusting to demand, trying to optimize asset use.
But then Schneider went the other way, buying Callan to expand its dedicated fleet.
Right. So different strategies playing out. Schneider clearly sees long-term value in dedicated, maybe in specific niches or regions. The ranking by total power units shows the scale involved here.
Okay. Shifting gears to warehousing. Dry storage first. Rankings look stable, but mentions of rising labor costs, turnover, and maybe tariff impacts.
Yeah, that sounds right. Labor is a perennial issue. Cost, availability, retention, and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then the tariffs, that just adds another layer of uncertainty. What goods will need storing? How much? It makes planning difficult and could definitely squeeze margins. The list of top firms shows a mix. Pure warehousing players and retail logistics arms like Amazon.
And refrigerated warehousing or cold storage sounds like a different story there. More growth.
Seems so. We saw Lineage Logistics go public, big IPO, $4.4 billion in July 24.
Wow.
And they operate, over 480 warehouses now? Huge expansion.
What's driving that growth in cold storage?
Probably a few things. Online grocery is a big one. Need sophisticated cold chains. Also pharma, other temperature-sensitive goods. It's a specialized, growing niche.
And Lineage and Americold dominate that list, right?
They're the big two in refrigerated.
Okay, finally, ocean and air freight forwarders. Both saw growth in 2024.
According to the sources, yes. Sinotrans led in ocean freight, 4.8 million TUs.
TUs, 20-foot equivalent units. That's a lot of containers.
Massive volume, yeah. And Kuhn plus Nagel topped the air freight list, 1.9 million metric tons. Global players, big scale.
What might be behind that growth?
Could be shifting trade patterns.
Yeah.
Maybe more demand for faster air freight for some goods. Maybe still some lingering effects from pandemic supply chain shifts.
But you mentioned these segments are vulnerable to trade uncertainty, too.
Hugely vulnerable. Their business is literally the international movement of goods. So any disruption, any policy change, it hits them directly.
Which brings us squarely to that trade uncertainty cloud. What are the key factors your sources point to for 2025?
Well, the big one seems to be the new punitive import tariffs announced in April 2025.
Right, particularly the China tariffs, 54%.
Exactly. That's reportedly leading businesses to build up inventory before the tariffs fully bite.
Ah, the pre-buying effect.
Yeah. And that inventory buildup is straining warehouse capacity, which was already tight in places.
So it's like a domino effect. Tariffs cause inventory rush, warehouses fill up.
And it ripples through the whole chain. Longer term, it might shift sourcing, impact prices. It's complex.
And it's not just the big tariffs, right? There was something about de minimis rules.
Yes. Changes to the rules for small, low-value e-commerce shipments, especially from China.
Okay, explain de minimis quickly.
It's basically the value threshold below which imports get simpler customs, lower or no duties. Changing that threshold really messes with the economics for cross-border e-commerce sellers and the forwarders handling those small packages.
Gotcha. More friction, more cost there.
Potentially, yeah. And then there's this mention of unpredictable federal worker actions under Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency.
Yeah, that was unexpected, causing instability, even more than tariffs.
The sources suggest it's adding to the general climate of unpredictability. Any major disruption in how government functions, hiring, firing, you can have wide economic ripples, impacting confidence, services, which indirectly hits logistics too.
So multiple sources of policy-driven uncertainty.
Seems that way.
And the inventory build plus full warehouses, that's directly hitting air and ocean volumes now.
Logically, yes. If warehouses are full, there's less immediate pull for new imports. That can dampen demand for container shipping and air cargo.
Right. Hits carriers, hits forwarders.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's the whole interest rate question. People were hoping for Fed cuts.
Right. But the concern raised in the sources is that these new tariffs could actually fuel inflation.
Because imported goods cost more.
Exactly. Which might make the Fed hesitant to cut rates if their main worry is inflation.
And if rates stay higher for longer?
That could mean slower overall GDP growth, less economic activity, and therefore less demand for logistics services. It's all interconnected.
A tricky balancing act. And we still have the background noise of shipping disruptions. Red Sea, Suez Canal.
Yeah, those geopolitical issues haven't gone away. They directly impact transit times, costs, predictability for international freight.
Adding time, adding cost through rerouting.
Definitely. The sources note it actually gave a bit of a boost to the International Transportation Management, or ITM, segment late in 2024.
Because companies needed help navigating the disruption, finding alternatives.
Precisely. More complex management, visibility, resilience planning, that's where ITM providers can step in.
So it really feels like a perfect storm almost. New tariffs, policy shifts, piling on top of existing inventory and capacity issues.
It's a confluence of factors, for sure.
And the projection is that this trade situation is expected to slow both global and U.S. growth in 2025.
That's the sobering assessment mentioned, yeah. It highlights that this isn't just a logistics problem, it's a broader economic headwind. Logistics just happens to be right on the front line, feeling it very directly.
Okay, so given all these headwinds, what does the bigger picture look like? Market size, future outlook, is it all doom and gloom?
Not entirely, no. The global 3PL market is still projected to be enormous. $1.36 trillion in 2025.
$1.36 trillion.
Wow, and the forecast out to 2030 suggests a compound annual growth rate, CAGR, of about 5.5%, reaching $1.78 trillion.
So decent long-term growth globally. Where's most of that growth expected?
Asia-Pacific is projected to hold the largest share. Makes sense given its role as a manufacturing hub and growing consumer market.
Okay. And zooming back into the U.S. market.
Projected at around $246 billion for 2025, growing to maybe $290-ish billion by 2030. That's a CAGR of about 3.4%.
Still growth, just maybe slower than the global average for that period.
Seems that way based on these numbers. And the major players are the ones we've discussed: C.H. Robinson, XPO, UPS, Expeditors, J.B. Hunt.
So the takeaway is challenging near term, especially in North America, with trade uncertainty being a major factor. But the underlying long-term drivers for outsourced logistics are still there.
I think that's a fair summary, yeah. E-commerce isn't going away. Supply chains remain complex. Businesses still need that specialized logistics expertise. The companies that can navigate the current turbulence and adapt strategically are probably well-positioned for that long-term growth.
Well, this has been incredibly insightful, a real deep dive into the complexities facing North American 3PLs right now.
Glad we could cover it.
We've touched on the slow growth, the huge impact of trade uncertainty, how different segments are faring. It's clear the landscape is really shifting, influenced by both economics and some pretty major policy decisions.
Absolutely. It's a sector where macro trends, policy, and company strategy collide very directly. Always fascinating to watch.
So, thinking about all this, the slower growth now, but also the potential shakeups from trade policy and all these acquisitions. Here's something to chew on. How might these dynamics force businesses, the ones using these 3PLs, to change their own strategies? And could this period of uncertainty actually spark some unexpected innovations or new ways of doing things in logistics in the next few years?
That's a great question. Necessity is the mother of invention, right?
Definitely food for thought. Thanks again for walking us through this complex picture.
My pleasure.